this was going to be a video that consists of maybe 10 unread historical fictions on my shelf, but when I went to start pulling those 10, they turned into more and turned into more, and now I have way more unread historical fiction books on my shelf. As I've mentioned on my channel before, I don't keep all of the books that I own on my cart. I have bookshelves, like floating bookshelves in my room, like on my wall, and then I have like 2 TBR carts, and then I have like 4 bookshelves. And so all of these books were placed sporadically throughout my house. And usually I don't run upstairs and like bring books from like that inventory down for filming, but I assumed that this was going to be a few books, and so I started pulling them all from all the places that I keep books in my house. And when you bring them all together, do I even read? Like, how are this many unread books on my shelf? Like, am I even a reader? Quite a few of these I don't think that I've ever mentioned on my channel before. Almost all of these I don't think that I've ever mentioned on my channel before. So this is kind of like a old haul. Some of them are new. Some of them I recently purchased in like December. Like 4 I purchased this year. So some of them are new, but a lot of them have been sitting on my shelves for a minute. So this is a video of all of the unread historical fiction books on my shelf. It's for accountability, also inventory, and yeah, we're gonna jump in. So the first 2 books I have are from the same author. One is The Personal Librarian. This, I believe, follows a character who is Black, but she is white passing. So she is the daughter of Richard Greener, the first Black graduate of Harvard. So I'm not sure what the time period this is set in. It looks like it's set in like 1905, 1909. So we're in New York City in the early 1900s. In her hidden genius, we are following a character named Rosalind Franklin, who is a scientist that works with DNA. So she is determined to unlock all of the secrets and hidden knowledge around DNA. And it says that once she is able to finally do that, a lot of things start to happen next. It says this is a powerful novel that shines a light on a woman who sacrificed her life to discover the very nature of our DNA. A woman whose world-changing contributions were hidden by the men around her, but whose restless drive advanced our understanding of humankind. This sounds very much like female empowerment, and that is always a good time. I don't know anything about science or about the DNA, so hopefully that's not like overwhelming. Yeah. Next up, I have Hamnet, which is set in 1518 England. It is about the Black Plague, and I believe that we're following Shakespeare's son, Hamnet, which inspired the play Hamlet, if I am not wrong. I am mostly going into this because I am interested in the Black Death, the Black Plague, the bubonic plague, whatever you know it by. That's the driving force behind this. I'm not really like a huge fan of Shakespeare or his son, so like don't really care about that. I'm not gonna say I don't care about that, but like that was not the selling point. I just wanted to read a book about pandemics, and I was looking for one about the Spanish flu, but then I came across this one and I was like, you'll do. The next book I have is The Nature of Fragile Things, which I have no idea what it is about. We're following a young Irish immigrant who is desperate to get out of New York, and so she becomes a mail-order bride and moves to San Francisco to marry a man that she knows nothing about. He is aloof and mysterious, but she develops a deep affection for his daughter, who is 5 years old and rather silent. But her husband's odd behavior leaves her with the uneasy feeling that something about her newfound situation isn't right. One spring evening, a stranger at the door sets in motion a transforming chain of events. Sophie discovers hidden ties to 2 other women. The first is pretty and pregnant and is standing on her doorstep. The second is hundreds of miles away in the American Southwest, grieving the loss of everything she once loved. The fates of these 3 women intertwine on the eve of the devastating earthquake, thrusting them into a perilous journey that will test their resiliency and resolve, and ultimately their belief that love can overcome fear. Did not read the synopsis for this before I purchased it, but that sounds really fucking good. I gotta add this to the top of my TBR. The next two I have mentioned on my channel before, and I'm actually getting ready to read it now, like this upcoming week as a buddy read. I will be reading The Henna Artist, and I also have the sequel, which is The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. A friend of mine read this book, and I guess like our main character is getting the tea, getting the details of like all these wealthy elite women and the drama that they have going on in their life. And I have discovered that one thing I love about historical fiction is the character development. I am a character driven reader, and that is one of the driving points for my fantasies when I read them, or really any book that I read. But like, I love reading fantasy books because there's a heavy amount of character development that is required in a fantasy, especially over the course of a series where you're following multiple books. There has to be a significant amount of character growth and payoff for the characters that we are following, and that is one thing that I absolutely love about reading fantasy. But I've discovered that in historical fiction, when you remove all of the extra like magic systems and plot twists, whatever like that, and you're just following fully realized, fully developed characters that just come to life off the page, and it's just juicy drama, I eat it up. So I'm very much looking forward to The Henna Artist. This book is a book that will self-destruct if I don't read it soon. I believe it's been on my shelf for like 2 years. Maybe 2.5 years, because it was a gift from Aaron. This is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. We are in Alaska in 1974. We have a family that we are following. And I heard that this one is like heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. It makes people cry all the time. But since it's set in Alaska, do you think it'll be like atmospheric? Because I also love atmospheric books, especially in the winter. Like I should put this on the list of books that I need to read this winter, because I love reading cold books when it's cold outside. Love that. Perfect experience. So the next two books is taking it way back into history, and that is going to be Circe, which is a witch that was featured in the Odyssey for like 5 minutes, but she seems to have a 400-page book. So don't know what to say about that. That's the thing. And then I have the Book of Longings, which is supposed to follow a character who is named Anna, but she is the wife of Jesus. And I thought Jesus's wife name was Mary Magdalene, Mary of Magdalene, however you say that. But her name is Anna. I don't know this woman. Hopefully these are a fun time. The next book is a new one that was a pre-order, because I'm trying to read from more authors that are not US centered, and this author lives in the UK, and that is going to be Pandora. Love the cover of this book. It's really the reason why I bought it. We are in London in 1799. Dora Blake is an aspiring jewelry artist who lives with her uncle in what used to be her parents' famed shop of antiquities. When a mysterious Greek vase is delivered, Dora is intrigued by her uncle's suspicious behavior and enlists the help of Edward Lawrence, a young antiquarian. That's what they're called. You learn something new every day. Edward sees the ancient vase as key to unlocking his academic future. Dora sees it as a chance to restore the shop to its former glory and to escape her nefarious uncle. But what Edward discovers about the vase has Dora questioning everything she has believed about her life, her family, and the world as she knows it. As Dora uncovers the truth, she starts to realize that some mysteries are buried and some doors are locked for a reason. Essentially, this is about Pandora's box. And this sounds like a fun time. This one is an extremely beloved and popular one, and I can't read historical fictions without reading some of like modern classics, and that is going to be All the Light We Cannot See. I know that we have one character who is in France, and then we have a Jewish character in Germany, and somehow they're going to intertwine with one another. I've heard this book explained so many times. Like, I've watched a lot of reviews for this book, and it is crazy to me that I've heard the synopsis in one ear and it seems to have left throughout the other ear with no retainment. I feel like I should know accurately what this book is about because I've heard it a lot. And I need to talk to my doctor because like that can't be healthy. That I keep hearing something and like it's not sticking. Next up, we have the Book of Lost Names. Our main character, Eva, was alive during the Nazi occupation in Paris, and her father was a Polish Jew who got arrested and she escaped. And as she's seeking refuge in this small village, she starts to work with the rebellion and create false identities for Jewish people who need to go into hiding. But she keeps a book coded with the original names of the Jewish children that she changes, and the book now resurfaces years later. And I think several people are trying to decipher the coded language within this book, but only she can, and it contains a very important message that she needs to find answers to. The idea of a book holding such significant amount of information from this period of time just sounds so compelling to me. And I have a lot of books that are centered around books. So yeah, like you'll see that in this video too. The next book is called The Paris Library. This one is also set during the Nazi occupation of Paris, and we're also following a librarian, and there is a future timeline that somehow ties in to the one in the past that we're following. So you guys can see that a big chunk of last year was about me buying books that are centered around the same thing. I clearly went on a whole shopping spree. The next book I have is A Gentleman in Moscow. This is set in Russia. We are following a Bolshevik. He is being held prisoner in a hotel at the height of some of the more nefarious and drastic things that occurred during the Soviet Union, like right after it was kind of established, because it says it's in 1922. So yeah, I believe that this is like during the beginning of the Soviet Union. I have heard amazing things about this one, and this is one that, like, if I was going to anticipate a 5-star read, it would be this one. The next book I bought a while ago because so many of my subscribers told me that I need to read this book, and I seen it at my half price books for like such a cheap price that I grabbed it, and that is going to be Lovely War. I know nothing about this. I only know that people who watch my channel and watch how I feel about books and what I say that I like about books told me that I need to read this, and this was more of me just saying, you know what, I'm gonna trust them. I'm gonna see if my subscribers have taste. So the next one I anticipate to also be a 5-star read, and that is going to be The Mercies. We are set in Norway in 1617. There is a small village where all of the men within this village had a very fatal fishing expedition where all of the men folk in the town were wiped out and died, and so the women that are left in this village all come together to keep everything afloat and to survive without any men. 13 years later, there is a commissioner who is very devout in his religion, comes to this town, and he starts to accuse all of these women of being witches, and he is determined to root out the evil and to bring God into their life. He brings with him a young wife, and she has never seen independent women at all, and so she's very enthralled with them, and she starts to have a relationship of some kind with one of the women in the villages. I am seriously hoping that there's a female-female relationship in this book, like drastically hoping, but if not, still very interested in the whole witchy thing and like burning witches and like a town with just women for 13 years. How could it not be gay? How could it not be gay? So now we have 10 books left. The 10 that I originally thought was going to be the bulk of this video. The next book that I have is The Paper Daughters of Chinatown. Very intrigued by this one. We're in the late 19th century. San Francisco is a booming city, but it has a powerful underground organization that is kind of like a criminal gang that buys and sells young Chinese women into prostitution and slavery. These paper daughters, so called because fake documents gain them entry into America, but leave them without a legal identity, generally have no recourse. But a mission home for girls is one bright spot of hope and help. We are following one character who works at this mission home for girls, and another character who has come into the US thinking that she is going into an arranged marriage, but she is actually sold into slavery and prostitution. It says that both of their stories are going to merge together in a gripping account of the courage and determination that helped shape a new course of women's history in America. This sounds like a gut-wrenching time. It might wreck me. So maybe I should read this when I'm like already depressed to get all my tears out at one time. Next up, we have a couple of fun ones that I literally bought because it just sounded so interesting. The first one we have is Crossings. A Parisian bookbinder is tasked with binding a manuscript called Crossings for a reputable bibliophile. But when he goes to deliver the finished book to her, he learns that she has been murdered and mutilated. He believes the crime is somehow connected to the manuscript, so he disregards his client's wishes and he reads it. What he discovers in the book is a dazzling story consisting of 3 narratives, each as unlikely as the next. The first is a ghost story penned by an infamous 19th century French poet for an illiterate girl. The second is a noir romance set in Paris on the eve of the Nazi occupation, purporting to be the work of exiled German Jewish philosopher Walter Benjamin. The third is the fantastical memoir of a woman claiming to inhabit many lives across many lifetimes as she searches for her lost love. As the connections between this cast of unforgettable characters grow wider and deeper, their stories merge into an extraordinary tale of separated lovers held captive by an ancient law, finding and losing love again and again. If you know me, this sounds like a book I would tattoo onto my soul, because like everything about it, we are in a book and the book is following 3 people, 3 completely separate different groups of people, and somehow all of their stories are going to connect, and it's filled with like sadness and trauma and just like missed love connections. Come on. Like, I slapped my money on the table immediately after reading the synopsis. This is a book that I purchased when I was looking for more authors outside of the US, and that is going to be The Corset. We are following a character and she is on trial for a crime and she is set to die. In this book, we are following a character by the name of Ruth. Ruth is a seamstress who is in prison. She is awaiting trial for murder. And then we have another character by the name of Dorothea who does charitable work, and she is also doing a lot of research on the skull, or the shape of a person's skull, and how that can directly correlate to some of the most grave crimes that they have committed. But when she meets Ruth, she starts to question whether or not Ruth is actually guilty of what she did, because Ruth claims that her ability to use needle and thread and to stitch and sew is a magical talent that led to the death of the person that she is accused of murdering. And so Dorothea is unsure whether or not Ruth is actually guilty of this crime, and also if she is actually sane, because the ability to use needle and thread in a way that leads to the murder of a person usually signifies that they're not really all there, you know, they're not really with us. And this is set, I think, in like Victorian times. So this is more like goth, but the setting of it is historical fiction. So it's more like a goth historical fiction. Another author outside of the US is going to be Sarah Perry, and I have Melmoth. We are following a character in the 1930s in Prague, and yeah, she's in Prague. She comes across this letter that talks about Melmoth, which is a superstitious fairy tale story about a character who hunts down her prey and puts them in a purgatory, and she disregards it as just a superstitious folklore. But then strange things starts happening in her life, and it ties her directly back to the letter that she found. The next book I have is The Foundling. London, 1754, 6 years after leaving her illegitimate daughter Clara at London's Foundling Hospital, Bess Bryce returns to reclaim the child she has never known. Dreading the worst, that Clara has died in their care, Bess is astonished when she is told that she has already claimed her. Her life is turned upside down as she tries to find out who has taken her little girl and why. Less than a mile from Bess's lodging, a young widow has not left the house for a decade. When a close friend of hers persuades her to hire a nursemaid for her daughter, she is hesitant to welcome someone new into her home and her life. But her past is threatening to catch up with her and tear her carefully constructed world apart. It says that this is a book about 2 women bound by a child and a secret that will change everything. Another extremely beloved historical fiction I have is going to be The Book Thief, which is another book that I've heard described 1,001 times but still cannot regurgitate it back towards you. I think that we're following a girl who is stealing books that the Nazis have tried to ban and burn, but maybe it's not the Nazis. Somebody's burning books and somebody's stealing them so that they don't get burned, and that is essentially all that I know. The next book I have is The Fountains of Silence. We are set in Italy, Madrid, for this one in 1957 under the oppressive dictatorship of General Francisco Franco. Spain is hiding a dark secret. Meanwhile, tourists and foreign businessmen flood into Spain under the welcoming promise of sunshine and wine. Among them is 18-year-old Daniel, the son of an oil tycoon who arrives in Madrid with his parents, hoping to connect with the country of his mother's birth through the lens of his camera. Photography and fate introduced him to Anna, whose family's interweaving obstacles reveal the lingering grasp of the Spanish Civil War, as well as chilling definitions of fortune and fear. Daniel's photographs leaves him with uncomfortable questions amidst shadows of danger. He is backed into a corner of difficult decision to protect those he loves. Lives and hearts collide, revealing an incredibly dark side to the sunny Spanish city. The next one was a gift that I got this Christmas from Stephanie over at Stephanie's Bookverse, and I was so excited to receive it, and that is going to be The Golem and the Jinny. We're following the Golem and the Jinny in 1899 New York as they try to fit in with their immigrant neighbors while masking their true identities. So this is historical fiction, but it has elements of like folklore and myths, and so I'm very intrigued to see how the author is going to tie those two things in together. And the next books are in a series that I got from my half price books some time ago, and that is going to be The Shadow of the Wind, which I think is book 1, and I have The Prisoner of Heaven, which I believe is book 3 in this trilogy. Each book seems to be following different characters, so they're not exactly linear in the story that they're telling, but I know that this book is a book about a book, and we're set in like 1950s Barcelona. And in The Prisoner of Heaven, we are also in Barcelona in 1957, and it looks like we're still centered around books or a mysterious bookshop in particular. So I definitely need to find book 2, because I'm pretty sure that, like, I remember when I was purchasing these books that it was 1 and 3 that was available, and I grabbed them since I was there, and I was planning to find book 2 later on, but I forgot because these have just been upstairs sitting on my TBR cart, and I have not looked at them in a while. So I need to find book 2 in this trilogy so I can have the complete set. And I just realized that there are 2 more series that I forgot to bring into this video, but both of those are going to be the trilogy by Ken Follett. I have The Pillars of the Earth and the Giants books. I don't know what they're called, but I'll put a picture up here. I do have those trilogies that I need to read. And that is, for the life of me, I hope, all of the unread historical fiction books on my TBR. Hopefully I can get through 10. I feel like 10 is a reasonable goal. I'm gonna set a goal of 10 minimum books to read from this video. And wish me luck. I will see you guys in my next video.